and here's my catchphrase on it: don't go from lean to Byzantine. Don't create complicated processes just because you can. Strip it away, strip it away, strip away the complexity. You're going to hire people who keep wanting to put complexity in your business. Strip it away. Don't say yes to all of that extra stuff. Stay really focused on one core mission: creating customers.
Welcome to UpTech Report. This is our Founder's Journey series. UpTech Report is sponsored by TerraLeap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. Today, I'm excited to be joined again with my guest, Clint Oram, who's based in San Francisco. He's the co-founder and chief strategy officer at Sugar CRM. Welcome back, Clint. Good to have you on.
Thank you, Alex. Pleasure to be here.
Now, this is actually part two. Go back and listen to part one of understanding actually the history of CRMs, the evolution, and to also where Sugar CRM is headed and the concept of how AI is playing a very interesting and growing role in CRMs. Getting back to
not just CRM, but how we work across the board. Yeah, the future of work.
The future of work. So go back and definitely listen to that. But in this conversation, Clint, I want to hear a bit more about your journey, because there's a lot, and there's no way we're going to cover it all in just the 20 minutes or so. But looking at your LinkedIn profile from Sugar CRM, I love how you've broken out. It almost looks like someone else's entire LinkedIn profile of all the roles that you've played. Can you take me back? Like, were you just always fascinated with technology, and like what led you to even starting Sugar CRM?
Oh boy, where did that? Let me go back into the Wayback Machine. Into the 1980s, 1983, my dad started a technology company called Media Computer Network. In 1983, this is pre-email. And one of the challenges out there in the pre-email period, but specifically in the early 80s, was when public service agencies needed to get in contact with the media quickly, it was the phone tree. Calling people, boom, 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 boom. So if there was an earthquake, if there was a flood, if there was a fire, if there was something that needed the media to be involved very quickly, there was no quick way of getting out the information. Again, for those of people watching today who've never not had the internet, you're probably sitting there scratching your head saying, I can't really fathom how that world operates. But that was the world I grew up in. My dad started a company to address that problem. It was essentially email before there was SMTP and such. And in fact, he got disintermediated by email. So his business, he didn't pivot quickly enough. And in 1990, as email came very common across the board, his company frankly went under. And so as a young teenager, I was helping my dad QA software. I was standing at his knee, looking up starry-eyed at this awesome entrepreneur, making it happen. I was out there attending trade shows and manning the booth. So this was my early teenage years. So I was
just building up in you. You're just seeing this. You're like, I want to do this already from that point.
I want to do that. Yeah, exactly. Actually, not with that much clarity. At that point in time, there's some teenage cynicism in there. I was like, oh God, Dad, okay, yeah, I'll help you with that, sure, right. It probably wasn't until my 20s that I ended up realizing, oh wait, that was really cool. That was I got the
Looking
early
backwards.
view of that, right?
Yeah.
Coming back to Gladwell's 10,000 hours, right? And I got my 10,000 hours in early. And that's what launched me along on this journey of being an entrepreneur. And in there, the Myers-Briggs personality test. So when I fill out that Myers-Briggs personality test, I'm an ESTP, which is called the entrepreneur. I'm addicted to change. I have no patience for details. I'm always driving for what's next. And in there, you can imagine, in some circumstances, that's fantastic. In other circumstances, not so much. So one of the things I learned from my dad's journey was to surround yourself with experts, to do the things that you're frankly not very good at doing. And that was a challenge. If I look back on my dad's journey as an entrepreneur, that was probably the biggest challenge he had was wanting to control everything and not being able to envision scaling the company up through the help of others. And that's something I think that I've put a lot of energy into thinking about. And I think that's been a big part of my journey.
You have firsthand experience of what didn't work. You're like, how can, maybe even subconsciously applying that when you start your own venture, you're like, I need to surround myself and not have as much control. Was it conscious or subconscious, that decision?
Oh, it was very conscious. Let me tell you, when Dad's business went under, that was catastrophic in the family. It reverberated for years across, and it was something that every dad and son have their stuff to figure out, and that was part of our stuff that we had to figure out. And so let me trust me, conscious, very conscious, very aware,
very conscious. So when you started Sugar CRM, you and your co-founder, how did that begin? Can you just share some of those beginning stories?
Oh, let me walk you through 2004. It's burned into my memory. I love 2004. So it was January 18th, 2004, that the guy who sat in the cube next to me, John Roberts, said, "Hey, you want to go out to lunch?" I said, "Sure, let's go out to lunch." We went down to this local Thai place in San Mateo, and he starts throwing out these ideas of open source CRM, starting our own company. And in there, I'm thinking, yeah, this is why I'm here. This is why I'm in Silicon Valley. Yeah. Keep talking, man. And on the way back from lunch, I remember very vividly standing maybe 2 feet behind him at one point and looking at the back of his head and saying, I'm doing this. And so John recruited me, and we were working together as product managers at another CRM company. Started kicking around the idea, just pulling together nightly phone calls, shaping a business plan, really trying to figure out what it is that we wanted to do. Fast forward to March, we recruited our third co-founder, Jacob, the engineering guy. I'm a developer by training, but in my head, I'm a product manager. So that's the lens I look at the world through when it comes to business, is as a product manager. I've done every other role around it, but so I can code, and I wrote the front end to the application. Jacob was the brainiac, and he created all the back end stuff. And so the two of us together were a pretty dynamic duo. And John was our sales and marketing guy. And so we quit our jobs at the end of March. We started on this venture April 1st. We released our first source code on SourceForge in May, started getting thousands of downloads. We did a venture incubator presentation. So we went to this place and we presented in front of a bunch of VC guys on June 4th, 2004. July 15th, we had $2 million in our pocket from Josh Stein. August, we hired our first 10 people and moved into our offices. October, we started selling. And by December 31st, we had sold our first $250,000 worth of software, and we had 15 people on board, and boom, we're off to the races.
I can tell you, it's very much burned into your memory, just every step of that process.
Yeah, I can literally walk you through almost every day of the year, right?
What would you say is one of the key factors that contributed to that initial success and growth?
I've been asked that question a lot, and I will give you a surprisingly non-technical answer, because I think the product-minded folks out there, like me, will want to say it was the product. You know who our very first hire was? Tara Spalding. Tara Spalding is a fantastic marketer. So she worked with us at the previous. All three of us worked at the same CRM company called Epiphany, and Tara was in the marketing department, doing field marketing, demand generation. She was kind of the fourth co-founder, to be quite honest. She was our first hire. She came on board. She had that magic touch when it comes to building buzz, right? And she did a fantastic job of that, and really got to thank her for that.
Do you remember any one of the initial campaigns or elements that she created that actually worked?
You asked that question.
Oh.
Here is the scrapbook my wife made for me back in 2009.
Oh my gosh!
And here's a whole bunch of the first articles Breaking the rules with open source. Sugar CRM makes commercial open source sweet with sugar sales. Open source, now it's an ecosystem. Open source is more than just sharing code. There you go. There's some of that the talk tracks that got us launched.
And it's just that it's I guess having that initial hire, that's a powerful note, I think, for a lot of founders to realize marketing, creating the buzz, creating the awareness, not just the product itself, helps when
best product does not always win. In fact, the best product rarely wins. Best marketing wins. Got to think about that.
Thinking back the 17 years, over the 17 years, if there's one thing that you could go back and tell yourself when you started Sugar CRM, what would be that one thing that you would want to, or two things if you come to your mind?
The one thing that I would go back and tell myself, don't worry about change. So for me personally, my job has been different at Sugar every 2 to 3 years because my personality is one of driving change. And there's been a few times along the way where I had a hard time letting go of the last so that I could go embrace the next. And it comes back to that I think number one challenge for any founder, which is ego. Ego gets in the way. Your investors don't care about your ego. Your investors care about making money and growing the company. Ego is to me is the root of all problems for founders, because you have this, it's part of your personality. You want to change the world. You want to shape the world. You want to control what's happening ahead of you. And you need to recognize that you need to step back and let go of the reins and go focus your energy on whatever needs to be done to grow the company next. And whatever you're doing today may not be the thing that you need to be doing tomorrow. So you talk about that list of things that I've done on my journey here at Sugar CRM, and what's not on there, because it would just be completely egotistical to put it on there, was I was effectively the first CFO. I hate to call it a CFO. I ran the books. I lined up the first. I paid the bills. I ran QuickBooks. I lined up our first insurance. Because mostly because my two other co-founders didn't want to do it, and I said, I'll do that. That sounds interesting. In fact, let me go figure that one out. And so for the first 6 months, I was VP finance, I guess you might want to call it. But again, I've met so many CFOs in my time that to even try and put myself anywhere near them is just completely ridiculous. And here's the story. So I was deep into doing one of our first deployments for one of our first customers, working hard on a Friday, hammering away on the keyboard, writing code, getting stuff done. And I forgot to run payroll. This is a crazy thing. You actually have to click a button every 2 weeks. Like, why can't you just set up on auto pay? I don't get this. Why you have to actually click a button? What's that all about? Talk about in need of automation. I forgot to click the button. So there was an intervention the next week. And the intervention was by our wives, right? Because our wives were funding us at this point in time. And I stopped being the CFO, right? And we went and hired somebody better than me. Not very hard to do.
Oh my God, that's quite a moment to realize. Okay, yeah, that's not the role I'll play anymore.
That was fun learning. Time to move on.
Speaking of team and building, that's one of the whole pieces. Okay, you have to market, get the product out there, get people there, but you have to build the right team and have that scale. How big is the team today?
500 plus worldwide.
Wow,
520, something like that. Yeah.
What would you say are some of the lessons or experiences you've had going from the initial 3, 4, and then scaling to 20 and then 100? What did it take? Where were the pain points that you remember?
Yeah, couple pain points in there. So one, when you're building teams, don't hire a bunch of people that sound, act, look like you. You want balance, right? So in the again, personality profiles and such, but there's all kinds of team psychology research that shows a balanced team is such more effective. If you're a guy who's not great with details, I need a detail person next to me, right? That sort of thing, right? So balance out your teams. Don't hire people that think just like you, because you need somebody who's looking out for your blind spots, right? Secondly, hiring is not easy. You need to go get some help. On that topic of hiring help, well, first person to hire when you're really starting to scale is the recruiter, right? And that's something that a lot of people forget at first, and that was something that we learned pretty quickly, and we had some great people helping us hire as we grew. And then the last thing that I would throw out is, when you're scaling out the business and you're hiring people and you're building processes and you're deploying technology, people, process, technology, I'm sure you've heard that catchphrase before. Focus on lean. There's all kinds of research out there about the lean startup, the lean machine. Don't try and automate the corner cases that deliver ultimately very little value to the company. Focus on what really matters and strip away the complexity. This was a hard one for me because I tend to like to automate everything. It's just the way my brain works, right? Like, oh, why is somebody pushing paper for that? We should go automate that, right? Instead of asking the question, why are you even pushing that paper, right? Why are we even paying attention to that? Why don't we push that away and stop doing that? That's the real question that you should be asking as a founder. So I found us, and here's my catchphrase on it: don't go from lean to Byzantine. Don't create complicated processes just because you can. Strip it away, strip away the complexity. You're going to hire people who keep wanting to put complexity in your business. Strip it away. Don't say yes to all of that extra stuff. Stay really focused on one core mission: creating customers.
If that's your core mission, that you're on the right track, and strip everything else away. Wow, that's powerful. That is powerful. Over the years, curious, have there been any moments of a plateau, and how did you get out of that?
Yeah, like any business, you hit plateaus, and here's the uncomfortable reality of that. Sometimes it takes new people to look at a problem differently. So you end up changing out some executives. You might change out some key people along the way, because the way that they looked at solving the problem is not helping you in the past, is not helping you go initiate that next growth curve.
How long do you wait? And like, do you let that go where nothing's happening? Like,
I've never met a CEO who said he fired somebody too quickly. Never met that CEO. It's in our nature to try and make it work longer than we should. So I've never ever once heard the CEO say, "Oh, I fired that person too quickly," or "I replaced that person too quickly." There's the reality of it, right?
So when you hit a plateau, you have to reassess the people that are there. Are they able to look at this problem with fresh eyes, or do we need to bring a new insight or new perspective to change it up?
Yeah, you remember my business partner I talked to you about, John Roberts, who started the company with. He and I are both World War II fans, right? So just total history nerds. Just such an interesting period in that it's just completely shaped the modern age that we live in today, and the United States as it is today. The post-war era, just fascinating. And what was that era? And John was a huge fan of Patton, right? And Patton there's a book of all of Patton's catchphrases that he had. And we would actually, John would have us as part of the team building exercises go through, he had these cards called Patton cards. Like, just imagine a card deck with all these catchphrases from Patton on there, right?
Nice.
And I got to tell you, when it first happened, like, all the amount of eye rolling happening in there would have put any teenager to shame, right? Like, what's this, right? But I got to tell you, I walked away from those exercises of finding each week at the leadership team meeting the patent catchphrase that we were thinking about as we went into the week. A very focusing exercise. And here's one, and I'm probably not saying it exactly right, but here's one from George Patton. Build teams ruthlessly.
Build teams
ruthlessly.
So
sounds kind of testosterone-y, sounds a little mean, but I gotta tell you, every founder who's sitting on this call right now is going, yep, build teams ruthlessly. If you're not evolving, you're dying. And there are some people that can evolve with you. The majority can't. And so the team that has taken you to today is not necessarily the team that's going to take you to tomorrow. You asked me about plateaus. Now, by the way, there's a lot more underneath that. It's not just about, shaking the 8 ball and see what it says this time, right? It's about much more. And I'll take you through a couple other thoughts. If you got time on this, want to talk about this for another minute or two? Okay, so first off, what's the purpose of a company? The purpose of a company is to create customers. The purpose of a company is not to build great products. The purpose of a company is not to create revenue or returns on investment for the investors. Those are byproducts. Those are great things that happen when you focus on creating customers. This is my mantra that I learned 15 years ago from very, very wise man, the editor of Selling Power magazine, Gerhard Geschwander. He led this talk that I still vividly remember. I remember looking at John Roberts and saying, I'm going to do this. And I remember looking at Gerhard Geschwander and going, dude, you're smart. And what he did was he's leading a workshop for a bunch of our customers. Very, very first event we ever did. Very first event we ever did. And he was the speaker, and he asked the question to the audience, what's the purpose of a company? And he got a lot of ideas that were thrown out. Make products, hire people, return on investment, et cetera. He said, those are all byproducts of the thing that you haven't said yet, which is create customers. The purpose of a company is to create customers. If you can focus on that, you're going to build the right products. You're going to go after the right markets. You're going to hire people. You're going to make money. You're going to get a return for your investors, all that kind of good stuff. So in there, when you find yourself in a lull, come back to your customers. Who are the customers I want to create? What do they look like? Where are they? What are their problems? How do I solve those problems? Am I solving those problems differently than my competition? That whole body of work is extremely effective and frankly a bit hard to do at times. The easy one is to say, I need to go drive efficiencies in the business, right? Isn't that the easy one to do? And by the way, nobody likes to cut their way into growth. Doesn't really work that terribly well, right? So driving efficiencies, very important. Great conversation to have. But if you find yourself in a plateau, you got to come back to your customers. What are you selling to them? How are you finding them? What are their pain points? And just center all that discussion around the customer. And by the way, you need a great CRM system to tell you about those customers. How about that for a plug?
You've got that one.
So there's some thoughts in there.
I love it, Clint. You have packaged us with so much great insights here and wrapped us nicely back to Sugar CRM. This has been powerful, and I know you have a ton of more insights. We may have to do a part 2 on the founder's journey sometime. But thank you for this time. It was awesome.
Pleasure, Alex. Thank you for giving me the time.
For those that want to hear more about Sugar CRM, go back and listen to part 1 of our discussion. Again, actually, the history of CRM and the future of work itself.
The robots are coming. The robots are coming.
Star Trek, not Skynet. Skynet, yes. Star Trek's coming. All right, we'll see you guys on the next episode of UpTech Report. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.